it always really riles me, that idea, and you can probably see me like physically getting irritated by the idea.
Let me at him.
Because that might be how we did it before we had the technology at our disposal now. But come on, we need to let go of the way it was done and recognise that there's a whole new world of learning in front of us.
And I guess the pandemic was sort of like, depending on how you look at it, in terms of styles of work, forced people into a different style of work very quickly. But I, at least with the people that my prospects and clients, it seems like a lot of them have just gone back to how they used to work before. And like you said, Lizzie, like people are playing around the edges, like, well, maybe you can have 2 days at home if you're a good boy, but the rest of the time you go to the office, or flip it the other way around, or it seems like they're still doing this pretty much the same thing.
And it is. But I don't know if you found an interesting one.
Yeah, I don't know if you found you're having easier conversations with either people that want to be self-employed or with companies post-pandemic than before. Just curious about whether that was a shift for you guys.
We definitely are. I think pre-pandemic, everyone thought we were a bit weird because we worked this way and kind of didn't really want to know how we worked. They just wanted to know we did great work. But then the pandemic came along, and I think that was, some people say to us, that was so good for you. And in some ways it was, because everyone was forced to try a different way of working. But in many ways it wasn't, because it was actually terrible conditions for an experiment like that. There was huge amounts of anxiety, isolation, strict rules. We were living in a world that we'd never lived in before in our lifetimes. And what happened was organizations went overnight from having everyone in the office in meetings all day to having everyone at home on Zoom calls all day. And so actually, in a way, it wasn't a good experiment at all, because it wasn't considered strategized culture, wasn't factored in, nor all of the other stresses that were going on in the world at the same time. So for us, we felt that would hopefully be an inflection point, be a tipping point. And I think actually it was for individuals. It was like a mass enlightenment for individuals. I think that people in the workforce thought, hang on a minute, I can work from home and be with my kids and, go exercise in the morning and have lunch with my husband or whatever it might be. But then organizations, and particularly the leaders at the top of those organizations, have now started to say, pandemic's over, back to the office, which I think is causing some tensions between the general workforce and levels of leadership. But I would say that we are finding, and this is part of the reason that we're doing more and more consulting in the HR space, that people are more open to considering different ways of working. And also, I think they're actively looking for different forms of learning and development, for different forms of remote leadership or hybrid leadership. So it's not expected that you'll always be together in order to lead and inspire people. And I'm hopeful, although this may not be true, that diversity and inclusion has had a bit of a spotlight put on it, that there are a lot of talented people out there that could be included in the workforce and economically active, if only they were able to work when and where they chose. So I think it's been more bumpy than we thought. When we wrote the book, we were honestly thinking in 5 or 10 years, everyone will be working this way. And it's come as a bit of a shock that lots of organizations have said, back to the office now. It's just a bit bleak. But there's a source of competitive advantage for those who don't do that, for those who work differently.
I think the reality of the situation for business leaders is it feels more difficult to sanction autonomy and requires a lot more trust to do that. And I'm not sure that there's the bravery nor the know-how in the broadest sense for that to happen at the moment, which is where the Workstyle revolution, where Hoxby really comes in to help, which is in giving people the skills, confidence, behaviours, knowledge to work under their own steam and with autonomy really well, but also to give organisations and their leaders the confidence to trust those people to work to outputs and to give them the tools to create the culture that makes that work. Because for both entities, this is an inflection point in human history. There's no two ways about it. It's been exposed, if you like. The idea has been exposed. It's out there. People have seen it. People have tried it. People like it. It's not just going to go away. You can't just put it back in the box and forget that it happened. Eyes have been opened, and there is a real opportunity for organizations and their people to seriously evolve the way that we work into something that is fit for the digital age that we inhabit. If we're willing to let go of the industrial age paradigm that we've been stuck in and working to for the last 200 years. If we don't do that, then we're not really upholding our responsibility as citizens to one another and to the next generation to create a working environment that's optimal for us, for our organizations and the work we do, but also for our species. As Lizzie said, she talked about inclusion. The freedom to decide when and where you work for yourself feels like a luxury to a lot of us, but for many, it's an absolute necessity. For people who are have caring obligations, or have an energy limiting condition, an illness, or living with a disability, or a mental health challenge, or who are neurodiverse, or who are working parents, even those who are older, which will become all of us at some point, need to have the choice to decide when and where they work. And if we can give them that choice, then we can include them in the workforce. And Lizzie talked about economic inactivity. The economically inactive, as they have been described by politicians, the group of people who aren't contributing to the economy, make up something like 25 million people across those groups that I've just talked about. And if we can get those people working, then not only is that going to be great for them and great for society, it's also going to be great for our economy. So this is a massive issue, but we think it's in the hands of people to make it happen. Ultimately, it's people who need a work style. It's people who are leaders of organizations. It's people that run companies. So this is why it's a revolution. It's about people coming together behind a new ideal, a new way of working that we can all see is happening, is benefiting us. And we just need to be brave enough to make it happen and leave a legacy as the generation that used this inflection point to do something good.
Yeah, I mean, MeeTime, I'm a big proponent of, I guess what I'm most interested in is trying to help people save time at work so they can do more of the things they love. If they want to go and get promoted or increase sales, then they can go and do that. If they want to naff off and see friends and family more, then they can go and do that. So I think we're aligned on that. I'm bizarrely a big proponent of like in-person meetings still, because I guess you still want that human interaction. And I guess most people think when you're working remotely that you then sort of lose that. They're like, well, I guess that's kind of what drives people's fear of like, we need to get people back in the office so that they're mixing and doing all sorts of stuff. And I guess my usual point is that we'll give them a reason to come back in person rather than just forcing them to come in and do the same thing that we're going to do at home and they get more distracted. And I guess the main thing that crops up a lot in prospects is when, say, they've got new graduates coming in. It feels like that's more of an obvious, not miss, but like something to be worked through. Like, well, actually, they would benefit from being able to just, peek over the desk and ask someone something, or have someone walk past and see what they're doing. I just wondered if you've got any sort of tips for that from your experience in working with clients or with from Hawkesby. I'm Gavin Jones, founder and director at MeeTime, where we help organisations work more efficiently, happening to use Microsoft 365 to do it. If you want to know what Microsoft can unlock for your business, then check out one of the links in the description below.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that whenever Alex and I give talks, the first question is always about how can you build meaningful connection with people when you're working remotely? We are primarily a remote workforce at Hawkesby, but we really value in-person connection too. Alex and I had our Christmas lunch yesterday, It was brilliant. For example, we have an annual event called Refresh, where we get as many Workstylers as want to come along to do things together. And we completely understand about feeding off each other's energy, be that digitally or in person. And yes, often we're asked about new graduates or people just coming into the workforce and how they can possibly learn, because lots of people say, well, they learn from being around people, from organically being in meetings, and that is true. But we would also add that actually you can recreate that in a digital environment really well if you are purposely trying to do so. So, for instance, as you said earlier, Workstyle Revolution and Hoxie are both hosted on Slack. We don't have an office for either. They're Slack communities. And the great thing about Slack is that you can add people to a channel. So imagine someone joins a business long after a project is finished. If everything happens in real life, they've missed the chance to be in those meetings. Whereas if you join Hoxie long after a project is finished, we can unarchive the channel, add you to it. So you can see exactly how that project went, what questions there were, what opportunities there were, what challenges came along the way, and how to learn from it and make this project better. But also you can be added to other live channels just to spectate. And you don't need to do that synchronously. So it doesn't require that you're in the office on a Friday or whatever it might be. So we actually find that there are more opportunities for people to learn when you do things asynchronously and digitally. And particularly, a lot of Hoxbies have more than one career. They might have a background in, say, project management, and so they come in to do project management, but they also are a photographer, for instance, and so they do some photography work. And so there is a real chance, I think, to expand your skills and to learn differently. But as we've said before, it takes a bit of a mindset shift. It's about not thinking the only way to learn is through osmosis in a real life environment. That may well be one of the brilliant ways to learn. There are lots of other ways that you can learn as well.
Mm-hmm.
It always really riles me, that idea, and you can probably see me like physically getting irritated by the idea.
Let me add him.
Because is people always say it, oh, well, you need to learn by osmosis, and that might be how we did it before we had the technology at our disposal now. But come on, we need to let go of the way it was done and recognise that there's a whole new world of learning in front of us if we understand how to use it and we're intentional in the way that we do it. One of the things that I wanted to just add to what Lizzie was saying is that I think in a Slack environment, for example, or when you run a business digitally first, you can connect with anyone asynchronously within that organisation. You can simply send them a message, or you can organise a conversation behind it, or connect behind a common topic, something you both enjoy, whatever it is, be part of a group, and connect with so many more people than you might be able to connect with in a physical office environment, or who you might happen to bump into at the time that you happen to be there. That opportunity for learning is exponentially greater if you're intentional about it. If you think about, I mean, in the Workstyle Revolution, there's around 400 people at the moment, and it's been going for about 6 months. Now, if you could have a conversation with all 400 people, which you could if you wanted to invest the time into doing, I would wager you could learn a lot more from those 400 conversations than you could by spending the time kind of hanging around a real life water cooler in an office somewhere, hoping to bump into someone who might be able to talk to you or might want to talk to you.
That's not a fun thing to do.
No, exactly. So I think, and I think the other thing is let's be realistic about how we learn. Yes, we learn from one another and from observing interactions. We do that on video calls, but we also learn through other things like YouTube and other digital platforms. There's online e-learning. There's so many ways we can consume information and learn stuff. And I think we just need to, a bit like the whole revolution and idea, we need to take our minds out of the way things used to be done and be conscious of the way things can be done now, and make proactive choices about the way we teach people who we work with, how we onboard them, how we work together. All that stuff can be different, and it can be a lot better if we start thinking about it in that way and using the tools available to us now.
Yeah, I think so. And it's what people sort of miss a lot that I sort of help people with, because I sort of niched into Microsoft 365, but I don't sell any Microsoft licenses. It's just pragmatically that's what bigger companies usually end up using. Big proponent of, I use Slack as well in my business, as well as Teams. But actually, Teams, when it first came out, had something that would really help that I think they might have got rid of, but it wasn't really supported, where they would introduce 2 people in the organization randomly. You could set it to like do 1 a week or however many you'd want. That really would benefit of that different way of working and people making connections, which is a shame if they have got rid of it.
Well, there's bots for that and apps for that sort of stuff now, and you can use technology to spark conversations between people around different things, and you just have to do it. You just have to be proactive in it, and move from. And we talk about this a lot in the book, but move from a physical first mindset to a digital first mindset, which is that collaboration happens digitally first now, more than it happens physically first. And of course, there are nuances for different types of work that are being done. But a lot of people are going into physical spaces to sit at computer screens, digital interfaces, and actually their interaction with one another is largely through those digital interfaces more than it is being in person. So come on, let's just start
sitting
with
next to
digital.
each other with headphones on, I think.
Exactly.
I've seen that before on the same
Which is why 51% of people in offices experience loneliness. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you're connected, right? And
I do think that there's a mental health element here, that I think there is this proxy that if you're in an office, that means that you are not lonely, which is statistically not true. And actually, the profound level of connection that you can make in a digital environment is really significant. So after my cancer treatment, I went through early menopause, and we have an interest menopause group in Workstyle Revolution. I'm not sure whether you're part of it, Gavin, but you're very welcome to join if you aren't already, which is open to anyone who's interested in just learning about menopause or sharing their experiences. And I have just been blown away by what people have shared in there, how supportive they've been. These people I've never met. And I feel like my understanding of menopause is so profound because of them being happy to share their experiences. But also my connection to those people, even though I've never met them in real life, is really profound too. So I think, again, it's just about being in the mindset that actually, hang on, I want to find out about this. I can create a group within this community, and anyone at Workstyle Revolution can create any interest group for anything that excites them or interests them. So I think it's, as Alex says, it's just a mindset shift to how we learn. What does that look like, particularly in the digital age?
Yeah, I was going to say, I quite often come across like people go into work and just forget about how they consume information in their personal lives. So they'll just make a massive long spreadsheet deck with no notes and attach it to an email and then think, well, I've sent it, so that's my job done, rather than thinking of the consumer first or the reader. It's like, well, actually, you've got the ability to make an internal website with videos and pictures and text and everything that you would consume, mini videos, long form stuff. All the stuff that you consume in your personal life just gets forgotten about when you go into work. It's like, well, it's work. I just need to send a really long, boring email that no one's ever going to read, but I've sent it, so my job's done. Yeah,
and start that with "Hope you're well," which seems to be the default way of starting any email. But I completely agree. But, people swap. Like, honestly, everybody does it. Everybody does it. Stops and forgets who they are in a lot of the way in which people work and the way they communicate with people is not who they are when they're not working. And I think that staying closer to our authentic selves in the way that we work is really, really important for mental health, as Lizzie's talked about. But also, I think surely everybody's general happiness and enjoyment of working together should be that we're able to be ourselves, bring our whole selves to work. I know that's an overused phrase perhaps, but by being more authentically ourselves and demonstrating our individual contributions, we can all understand each other better and work together better. And I think that's only going to be a good thing. So anything that we can do to help with removing jargon and our work selves from the dictionary would be great.